Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Vaishnavi Desai, Senior Assistant Editor at Economic Times. Welcome to the session on generative AI and data-driven transformation and reimagining healthcare for better outcomes. The healthcare landscape is continuously evolving. It's driven by advancements in AI and the increasing availability of vast amounts of data. And we are definitely witnessing a paradigm shift in patient care, operational efficiency, and also medical research. Over the course of the conversation today, we will explore the potential of generative AI alongside robust data strategies to reshape healthcare delivery and also achieve better outcomes. Joining me in this session are our esteemed speakers, Sharmila Devi, AI consultant, Google Cloud India; Vikas Arora, Sales Director, Traditional Enterprises, Google Cloud India; and Madhur Gopal, Associate VP Marketing, Manipal Hospitals Group. Sharmila, Vikas, Madhur, thank you for taking time out and joining us. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you, Vaishnavi. Great to be here.
Before we proceed, yes. Before we proceed, a note for the audience. Kindly leave your questions in the chat box. We'll address them at the end of the session. I repeat, kindly leave your questions if you have any in the chat box, and we will address them at the end of the session. I now invite Sharmila to give us more insights. Sharmila, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vaishnavi. Let me quickly share my screen here. Cool. Hello, everyone. I'm Sharmila, an AI consultant from Google Cloud. It's a real pleasure to be here with all of you today. And in today's session, we'll explore the real-world use cases using generative AI that are being adopted by different hospitals and healthcare chains across the world. So let's quickly get started. There are broadly three key themes for the healthcare use cases that can be addressed using GenAI. The first one is how can we reduce the clinician and nurse burnout, thereby improving their productivity and efficiency. What we have observed is generative AI automates the time-consuming tasks like creating clinical documentation, tasks like creating discharge summary notes, and automating these tasks in fact allows the clinicians to focus more on the patient care and less on their paperwork, thereby reducing the burnout and improving their overall efficiency. The next theme that we have here is how generative AI elevates the consumer and patient centricity. So we have seen GenAI enabling personalized healthcare experiences, such as AI chatbots, and all these chatbots are provide 24/7 support, and these provide tailored healthcare recommendations leading to greater patient engagement and end patient satisfaction. And finally, the third theme that we have seen on ground is how generative AI is advancing the life sciences and research and development. So we have seen GenAI to accelerate the drug discovery research and development by analyzing humongous amounts of data sets and thereby identifying the potential drug candidates and optimizing the clinical trials. So let's dig deep into each of them. Now we have seen the three key themes. Let's see the top industry use cases under each of the theme. The first one is document generation, search, and synthesis. So this is a very common use case that we have seen not just in the healthcare industry, but across all industries. And it's a use case that has been adopted by organization, by enterprises at different GenAI maturity levels too. So with the advent of GenAI, when we see specific to healthcare sector, clinicians can spend less time on paperwork and more time on patients. And here we are automating documentation tasks. And these tasks include generating clinical notes, generating 10-15 pages discharge summaries, and so on. In fact, we are working with Manipal Hospitals, Madhur and the team to automate the nurse handover note generation and thereby increasing their efficiency and reducing the burnout. Now, talking about the second theme that we have here, that is the digital member concierge. We see that GenAI can power intelligent chatbots. Gone are those days when we used to have IVR and automated speech, same conversational flow. Now, with the advent of Gen AI, we are seeing chatbots that are super intelligent. We, being at the end consumer, might not even differentiate whether am I talking to a human or whether it's a Gen AI powered solution behind the scene. So these AI assistants can provide personalized support, and these personalized support can include answering questions, scheduling appointments too. So in case if this solution, this digital member concierge, is integrated with the internal appointment booking workflow within the hospital chain, then it can definitely automate a lot of tasks and reduce the burden of the teams that are working on scheduling appointments there. It can also help answer complex medical information in a very easy to understand, in a very natural, naive human understanding language. And finally, the third theme that we have here is how it can help clinicians for searching public and private documents, but it also on the private documents. Now, search is another use case that we have seen to cut across different industries and being widely adopted by customers across different domains. Now, the final use case that can also be considered here is the clinical trial report generation. So Gen AI can automate the entire, or when I say entire, most of the generation of clinical trial reports, thereby minimizing manual efforts and reducing the time to publication. So in the subsequent sections, we will dwell deeper into each of these themes, explore how specific use cases and examples of Gen AI is already making a difference in healthcare. Now, talking about document generation, search, and synthesis, let's just imagine a scenario. Imagine a clinician who wants to generate a prior authorization request for a patient's cardiac diagnostic cath. So traditionally, this would involve gathering a lot of patient information, manually filling out forms, which might eventually lead to delays. So with the advent of Gen AI, the process has become super simple. The physician can directly go ahead and provide a prompt, ask a question, mention an instruction. Okay, hey, can you help me with in drafting the prior authorization request? And here are the patient name details, age, condition, and this is the required procedure. So what does the Gen AI do? It just takes few seconds to automatically generate a comprehensive prior authorization request letter. And it also includes all the accurate medical codes and the relevant patient information too. So tasks like these, which might have taken hours or even days, could easily be done within few seconds. So that the clinicians can focus on the more important task of talking to patients, addressing them, hearing them out, rather than doing the repetitive mundane tasks. The next use case that we want to highlight here is the digital member concierge. So let's imagine a scenario wherein there's a pregnant patient and she wants to find the details about a gynecologist. Are there any classes going on? Any other additional information that might help her? So instead of directly going through the entire process of talking to people, she could probably just on mobile chat with this digital member concierge and ask questions to it directly. And the responses you see here, as highlighted here, are highly personalized, and they are from the content, they are from the details that would have been provided. So a key point to note here is there are options to ground the responses. All of us understand and all of us acknowledge that large language models hallucinate, generative models hallucinate, but there are ways to minimize them. There are ways to curb them too. So when we have the data provided to these models, the in terms of data stores, the responses are generated from them. So typically, coming back here, these responses are generated by the or from the relevant data that has been provided by the hospital, and will definitely help the Gen AI bot to answer it effectively. Now, health plans is another area wherein we have seen a high volume of inquiries from patients about coverage, what are the different benefits, what's the process of claim, and so on. So here again, Gen AI can streamline these entire interactions, and thereby providing patients very quick and accurate responses, thereby increasing their end patient experience too. So instead of waiting for days and instead of dropping emails, so probably just take your mobile and ask questions to it, and it will definitely help you with that. Now, talking about the third theme on advancing life sciences R&D, what we have seen here is that drug discovery and development is a pretty complex process and is a very time consuming process too. So researchers often need to analyze humongous amounts of data from various resources, and these resources could involve scientific literature, they could involve clinical trial data, and even their internal research documents. So if you just note here, we are talking about both public documents and private documents. And with the advent of Gen AI's capabilities, it can definitely streamline this entire process, reducing a lot of time, and thereby it can lead to faster time to publication too. And finally, we also see clinical trial report generation. So this is again a use case that has been adopted by many of our customers in the US. So how do we automate the generation of a clinical study report? So it again includes various data sources here. It could be the lab information management system, the LIMS. It could be multiple tables. It could be charts. It could be even handwritten notes, right? Researchers do capture notes both digitally. Few of them might even capture handwritten notes. So how do we incorporate all these data sources and create a clinical trial report for them within few clicks or within few seconds? So these are the widely used industry use cases. Now next, I would like to take few minutes to go through two specific use cases, how we can have a nurse assistant, how Gen AI can help build a nurse assistant. So here we have Marcus. Marcus is a caregiver, and he after a long day's shift, he is planning to hand off his shift to another caregiver or nurse, Kelly here. So Kelly has just come to duty, and Marcus has completed his shift, and they need to hand over the notes to Kelly. So this is the use case here, and this handoff between nurses not only involves digital information, but it might also involve handwritten notes too. So how do we take care through how do we implement this, and how it can help the nurses to ease their work towards the end of the shift, and also for the next nurse it will eventually help them perform better too. So let's assume there are 5 to 6 patients in a given ward, and this nurse Kelly, she wants to know more about a particular patient. It's Mr. Acosta. So before she steps into the room, she can directly go through the notes. So if you see here, these are the notes that have been drafted by the previous nurse, previous caregiver, and with the click of a button, she can not only go through them, she can ask follow-up questions too, that how is he doing, and are there any major medicines, any major practices or procedures that was done in the last 24 hours. So asking human like questions to it and getting responses right away is what this solution primarily focuses on. So with this, she can get a complete view of all the patient notes. And in the past, these notes were handwritten, and it could be verbal too. So once all of this is captured, then these are handed over to the next nurse. So with this, the first caregiver can log off, and the second nurse comes into the picture. So just like you see here, this is the nurse assistant. Solution, wherein the nurse could go ahead and ask questions to it, ask it to simplify it, ask it to summarize it. That help me summarize it in 5 key bullet points. Help me generate the discharge handover notes. And even translation. Let's say if the nurse is comfortable in a language, a local language, or if the patient is comfortable in a local language, so how do we translate these? So typically we have seen medical terms to be very specific to English language, but how can it be simplified because at the end of the day, it's humans who will be using it. So how can it be simplified? So these are the tasks, these are the questions that can be asked to this solution. Not only that, it can definitely be integrated with your internal workflows too. So this solution, it can be integrated with the pharmacy. It could be integrated with hospitals pharmacy. It could be integrated with Google Maps too. So in case of if you want to have a few features of this solution exposed to the patient too, so that would also help them for searching a pharmacy that is close by, right? And it can also help order the medications. So let's say if there are like 10 medications that have been prescribed, so all of it at the click of a button, if the workflows are all integrated, the internal workflows are integrated, then the medications, the order of these medications can also be placed directly to the hospital pharmacy, all within the use of a single English-like or human-like sentences, without having to go through the manual hassle. And it can also help compile a different discharge instructions. It could, based on your instructions, it could help you draft everything and also complete the entire discharge process for the patient. So to summarize, solutions like nurse assistant, solutions like nurse handover notes that we are currently working with Madhu's team from Manipal. So these solutions can definitely reduce the clinician's burnout, the nurse burnout, and help them have a better work-life balance too, and help them focus on patients who are the most important. With that, I would also like to quickly touch upon a second use case, a clinical intelligence engine, CIE, that we built for one of the largest hospital chains in India. So hospital chains that have been there in the market for a few years usually have tons of prescriptions, millions of discharge notes. And how do they generate insights? So these millions of discharge notes, these prescriptions from various various hospital centers located within the country, all of them contain important data, right? I mean, if you see, these contain all of the clinicians' knowledge, and all of it is being captured. But how do we generate insights from this gold mine? I would say this is a treasure, right? I mean, you have all of this information captured, but how do you generate insights from it so that it can be used and leveraged in future? So this is what was the vision of clinical intelligent engine was. How do we generate insights from millions of discharge summaries and prescriptions? How do we standardize care treatment plan? So you could have different care treatment plans. So how do we standardize that so that clinicians across this different hospitals have the same treatment plan? And how do we in turn improve the clinician efficiency? So with the help of this solution, clinicians can make super informed decisions and help them recommend the next best action. What is the next set of medicines that can be recommended by the clinicians to the patients? Next set of medicines, next set of lab tests, and so on. So that we have a standardized care treatment plan. So here's the workflow of how the CIE, or the clinical intelligence engine, looks like. So let's just imagine a scenario wherein a doctor and patient are having a conversation. So the first AI intervention that you could look at here is doctor and patient, right? So both of them are having a conversation. It of course wouldn't be in English most of the times. It would be in the local colloquial language, right? So how do you understand their conversation? How do you understand what are the symptoms that the patient is saying? So you understand that, and how can you help draft the prescription that the clinician can then take a look at it and update it. So there could also be scenarios like, how do you ask the next best question? So let's say if the patient has a stomach ache or any other symptoms that he's talking about. So what are the next best questions that can be asked? Okay, so which side of the stomach is it paining? Is the pain high during the daytime, or is the pain high during nighttime? Do you see what did you eat? Is it food dependent? Do you have any allergies? So questions like these, there are chances that it could be missed by few clinicians. If we have AI interventions here, we could have a standardized treatment plan. So coming back to the scenario, once we have the prescription, then we could have a clinical NLU. Then we parse the different entities. We understand, okay, this is a symptom, this is a medicine, this is a lab test. We just extract those clinical entities and then build a knowledge graph. So here we are talking about building a clinical knowledge graph. And once we have the humongous knowledge graph available, how do we build Gen AI based solutions on top of it? How do we build traditional knowledge graph based solutions on top of it? I mean, there are two things here, right? One is you could build models using traditional knowledge graphs too. You could build models using Gen AI too. So once you have the models built, you next have the insights generated, wherein it might recommend, okay, this is the next best action. Probably you could recommend these medicines, these lab tests, these procedures to the patient. So this is the overall flow, and this is how a clinical knowledge graph looks like. So for a given patient admission, you could have like symptoms, allergies, the different entities that I just mentioned a few minutes ago. So all of it is captured. Now the beauty here is you could have the same phrase mentioned in different ways, right? I mean, you could have high temperature, you could have fever. Both of them actually mean the same thing, but they are in different wordings or languages or phrases, right? So in order to understand that, a Gen AI based solution partnered with a traditional UMLS or traditional ML based approach will definitely help you. And this is how a clinical knowledge graph looks like. Now just see, this is just for one patient, and this is just for one patient's one admission. Imagine if the patient is readmitted again, and if there are like millions of patients, and you have the patient details of all your patients that have been admitted in the past, or they have been treated in the past, right? So just imagine the size of the clinical knowledge graph, and how and generating insights from this humongous data is what can be done. Now this is where the other areas that this CIE can help. It can have multimodal capabilities. When we say multimodal, till now we have been focusing only on data, right? But how can we have images, right? So let's say if there is an X-ray report, let's say if you have a radiology report, let's say if you have a pathology report, how do you understand from it? How do you help clinicians make better decisions? This is what Gen AI and traditional AI can help you here. And finally, these are the use cases we discussed a lot, right? We covered the three key themes. We discussed use cases, different use cases, search use cases, personalized chatbot use cases, clinical trial reports, and so on. And then finally, we went in detail about the nurse assistant use case and also the clinical intelligence use case. Now, these are the use cases that we see that are being widely implemented, accepted by organizations in the healthcare industry. In case if you want to experiment with generative AI, what we strongly recommend you is to identify the use cases that you believe can be achieved using generative AI, prioritize them. So prioritization is super important. Identify the use cases which would give you the most ROI, and also analyze the tech capabilities, understand the organizational readiness in terms of costs, and how it will map to you. And finally, where once you're all set, also have a map of how to productionize this, because POCs, you could have tons of POCs built, but it really matters when these POCs go to production. So do prioritize that too, and then identify what works best for your business. With that, I hand it over back to Vaishnavi. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharmila. Thank you for sharing your insights. Next up, we have Fireside Chat, an interesting conversation on Gen AI's impact in healthcare. Joining me for the conversation are Madhur Gopal and Vikas Arora. Thank you for joining in, Madhur, Vikas. Look forward to the conversation.
Hi, Vaishnavi.
Madhur, my question to you, how is Manipal Hospitals leveraging the power of vast amount of data that you have, and how that has impacted patient care? And if you can draw a blueprint of the digital transformation journey you have undertaken with this.
I think the earlier presentation Sharmila has given a lot of key insights and the way healthcare is shifting. I think that was a thought for us also, that the vast amount of data which is sitting with healthcare, how do we use that using technology, right? And consumer expectation is also changing. The way consumer behavior is changing. They demand a little more of what traditionally healthcare is offering to them. So we are more of a reactive industry. Someone comes with a heart attack, we go ahead and treat them and ensure that patient is back on its feet. So healthcare, if you see, the way we store data is in our hospital information system, which is in HL7 format. Now, the base, format itself is not in a way structured format where we can play around with data. So most of the time, the kind of analytics or analysis we can use or we can do or perform on this data is very limited. And I think the base becomes for any healthcare player is to have a data lake layer where you can bring this data from HIS to this layer and have it in FHIR format, right? And that's where the data becomes scalable, interoperable, and you can start playing a lot with that data. So I feel that today a major challenge with many healthcare players remains that the data format in which it is required may not be there. And that's where the whole limitation comes in, that, we bring in multiple apps, multiple solution, and try to integrate with the base, hospital information system, which keeps breaking most of the time. And our ability to help patient in a meaningful manner is not there. So this journey was started 3-4 years back, and we were also one of the very, very few. I think we were the first player to have done that work. And I remember, when the Google team actually kind of helped us, there were team members who actually from US also kind of, who had domain experience. They helped us to kind of build this layer. After which, then we started doing a lot of work, right? So some of the areas where we have worked upon, and though I think, as Shamil also mentioned, there are a lot of POCs which are happening in the industry, and we also started few. So fortunately, some of them we are now scaling it up. We are in a scale up mode, and so I'll just share few with you just to give some idea what Manipal is trying to do in what kind of spaces, right? So one, we started in very early, I think around 2 years back, the remote health monitoring, wherein because that's the data, right? The data is residing. And the first thing was that when patient discharges from hospital, there is kind of, patient depart from hospital. So there is no continuation of servicing from hospital once they go back to their home, right? And what we the first use case was that can we actually go ahead and help these patients using remote health or the wearable devices when the data comes back to hospital. Let's utilize that data points and start helping them proactively to the patient. And if you see globally, the healthcare data is that within 30 days there are readmission rate, and that happens because when the patient is at their home, some of the symptoms they feel it's a part of surgery. Just to kind of give you an example, if there's a patient after knee replacement when they go back home, and if they are suffering from pain, they might think it's a part of post surgery. It's a symptom of that, and they have to live with it, and it will subside over a period of time. But in reality, it is not. Pain should not happen. I mean, doctor should really look into that. Do I need to change either the physiotherapy sessions or something else, or the medication itself? And so that's where we launched this program. Fitbit was the partner, and this data was coming on the single platform. So the special app was created wherein the data inside hospital plus the data which we are capturing from this wearable device was put into a format where the red flags can be raised. And I mean, we have had almost 1,600 patients on this program or from various specialities. I would say that 20% of these people were intervened by us in the sense that, either we have asked them to come back or we have asked the clinical staff, which is kind of visiting for home care services, to change the services which were delivered to them, right, to modify the clinical plan itself. I mean, so that is one space. But if I mean, from a healthcare perspective, I'm telling that when these programs are launched, how should we launch that? I think that becomes the most critical part. So the reason being why we were able to adopt to this so many patients was, one is we should identify key stakeholder. Who is the person who is going to drive this program for you? So in our case, it was more doctor-led. So we invited doctors right in the first meeting, even before the launch of the program, to plan that how we are going to launch. Are clinically they are seeing some benefit in their patient. It should not become more of a marketing gimmick or more of a IT initiative, right? It's a clinical initiative, and that's how it should be perceived in healthcare organizations, right? So we took them on board. Then the second piece, we created a digital command center. So every initiative which comes, it may need a separate manpower. It may need an additional support system within the organization, because we may not have people who can actually drive these initiatives which we are launching, right? So we created a digital command center. We actually deployed some people who are available 24/7, kind of, whenever that data comes, because sort of we need to act on it immediately, right? So we created that support system. We took key stakeholders on table, and then we did a lot of training program, because for a patient, one of the biggest, I would say, the deficit in our industry is the trust deficit. So the moment patient comes to the hospital, one of the feeling is that, am I going to be shaved off, right? So is this product what is recommended? Is it really beneficial or not beneficial? Especially when it comes to these kind of new initiative, they don't people really, because they come for normal surgeries or the procedures to be done. Now suddenly this becomes one add-on, not covered by insurance, have to pay out of pocket and all that stuff. So this whole program, how do you go ahead, don't push, it should not be salesy, it should be, I mean, we offered free also to many of the patients. The idea was to really patient to come back and share their stories, whether they're finding it useful or not, right? So very high level put, that's how we kind of implemented this program. Um, there's another program which is running for some time now. Personalized medicine in cancer, it is very critical. So genomics is one area where the personalization of medicine is happening right as we talk. I think it's happening across. The idea is really how do we take it beyond uh,
Mm.
onco. So the teams are working now on the nephro piece, on the on other specialities. For example, if you see from ICU, I mean that's one area where most of the attendant or the relatives, they're confused. Should I continue the treatment or should I stop the treatment? And that's where this whole thing is that if the probability of survival is high, then please go ahead and don't stop the treatment, because we know for sure that patient will survive. Similarly, in nephro and other specialty, the scope is really high. I mean, patients who are on kidney transplant list and all that. So this whole genomics piece is growing in that space, and
Also,
yes,
quite interesting.
uh,
Yes.
and that's the, I think, utility of data which we are trying to see how we can help the patient proactively, right? So this whole shift from reactive to proactive industry shift, which is happening, that is happening because of the availability of these technologies which are emerging, right? So operational efficiency is another area which I think one of the use case Sharmila has touched upon on the nursing handoff. Similarly, clinician handoff is another big area, which is in the similar lines, which is a big improvement, right? It doesn't only operational efficiency, but it helps in medical outcome, because sometimes
Yes.
misses to ask few questions which patient would appreciate, right? So and then I think another use case which we recently implemented and it is live, AI in diagnostic. Now there's a lot of data which sits on the lab report. Consumer doesn't know how to react on it, right? So many of the times, how do I kind of read? So this recent implementation, what we did was on if there is a prescription, uh, the AI tool kind of summarize that whole prescription for the patient. It tells the meaning to the patient, and now what we are working is on the lab report. What these numbers mean to me, and there's a trend report also. I mean, if there is a patient to Manipal and over a period of time, there's a trend report. But how does this trend report, implies to me? What should I do? Should I exercise more? Should I look for a dietitian, nutritionist, or a physiotherapist, or a general physician? I think that overall program, from a wellness perspective, is one piece. Second piece where we see it evolving on is on a heart failure program, because most of the cardiac patient, when they undergo a procedure, there's a very high likelihood that the mortality may happen due to heart failure, where the symptoms are unknown. Patient doesn't know the symptom, and one day, patient kind of dies while sleeping. So we are actually working on that program also. Idea is that proactively, can we help patient to elongate or to kind of have proactive action, so that we can we can slow down the progression of the disease itself, or take some early intervention. In cases of heart failure, people don't have to really die because of heart failure, because they can have ICT implants. They can actually have proactive measurement to prevent that particular piece. So from a vast data point of view, I think my only submission on this platform will be that annual data growth in healthcare industry is happening at around 36%, which is a
Correct.
massive data growth, right? So how do we actually go? And there is immense potential. I think that was touched upon in earlier presentation, that there is an immense potential to add a lot of meaningful contribution to patients' life. And that's where I think, healthcare systems need to modify and really start implementing and, executing some of these thoughts and ideas which are already available. And I would say they're maturing now. So it's the right time when most of the healthcare players can come in, and I'm sure that many healthcare players are already doing many early stages, but I think it's something which we should definitely look into doing it more.
Thank you, Mother. Thank you. Because where do you see generative AI making a deep impact on customers' businesses? Though Madhur spoke about some use cases, is there something that you want to throw light on?
I know we've discussed healthcare a lot, through Sharmila's presentation, and Madhu described what they are going through as a provider. As a company who has been providing generative AI tool sets and models, last 18 months for us have been extremely exciting, because what we have seen is a number of projects, and frankly human imagination, is the is really the limit of what people are thinking through. But we have to broadly categorize where we are seeing in broad buckets. One big use of generative AI that has been cross industry is in how do you enhance your customer's experience. Now, in the case of a provider, it is your patient. In the case of a retailer, it's your consumer, and so on and so forth. And by means of giving them virtual assistance, whether it is call center, whether it is in your process, like airlines are using full blown ticketing and grievance addressal mechanisms using generative AI agents, so just to enhance customer experience. Or retailers are actually having non-human intervened processes for somebody to, let's say, order through a drive-in into a burger shop. Wendy's is doing that in the US, and there are many examples in India to do that. So customer experience is a huge area. Second area is in marketing, because what we have seen is tremendous potential of generative AI to generate high quality content and images. And as a result, there have been a very expensive process which is usually found and done by CMOs across industries, which is how do you manage your ad campaigns? How do you manage campaigns, in general? How do you create imagery that doesn't have to go through months of iteration before you actually come up with something that you can test in the market? Those timeframes are being collapsed from days and months into hours because of generative AI, and we are seeing marketeers actually adopt generative AI in a big fashion today. Third bucket is how do you essentially improve the productivity and efficiency of your own functions. Now you have a legal function, you have an HR function, you have a supply chain function, you have a finance function. And in all of these functions, there is usually a need to consume large amounts of information and make sense from those. A supply chain professional may want to look at how are the last 10 years of contracts done with this particular vendor of ours, what have been their payment terms, and how can I basically use all of that past 10 years information, to basically negotiate my next contract with them. Now, otherwise, you'll have to go through reams of files and paper, but here you could simply query in natural language. If the digitized, last few years contracts have been fed to a large language model and say, give me the last 10 years payment terms that we have had with this vendor. And that just becomes something that you could do in a matter of minutes. A legal expert within an organization could go through all the files available and do a summarization, so on and so forth. So again, we are seeing that efficiency operational work. Last is, and that is really where a lot of debate is also happening, is generative AI going to put software developers out of business? But there is a lot of adoption of how do you generate code so that you can quickly write applications. One underlying theme, and I'll close with that, is that none of these are where generative AI is replacing anything, because there's a lot of discussion about generative AI is there to reduce some jobs or reduce some functions, completely take over a few functions. And I think there are a lot of myths around that are there. What we know and what we now today, and I think it's taken us about 18 months to sort of settle down to this fact, that it is an assistive technology. Even in healthcare, when you're looking at radiology reports and coming up with a diagnosis, it isn't a diagnosis, but it is an insight that can actually help a clinician get to a diagnosis. So again, it's an assistive technology. So what I can say very, very confidently is, I don't think generative AI is going to, let somebody lose their job, but you can certainly lose your job to somebody who uses generative AI better than you, because you have just that much of extra assistance that you can basically make to work for you.
Noted, Vikas. Thank you for sharing that insight. Now, stay with me on this topic. Where are the emerging trends or technologies that will shape the future of AI-powered healthcare?
So I think there've been some interesting conversations on that already. But I am reminded by something groundbreaking that we did in the research area in healthcare. So Google, I don't know if you heard, and there was an article recently this week. It was also in some Indian publications. But in 2018, or maybe sorry, I think 2021, uh, Google came out with with the second version of AlphaFold. And unfolding protein structures is perhaps one of the most complex research problems that is ever there. There are about 200 million known protein structures, and it usually takes a PhD student anything between 4 to 5 years to unfold one protein structure. With this AlphaFold model that Google came out with, we were able to unfold 200 million protein structures over a 1.5 year period. The amount of research time that it actually ended up saving was more than 1 billion hours. Now that's really the power of how very, very complex problems can be solved through AI, and that's an healthcare example. But coming closer to India, Vaishnavi, like there was an example. So we have this large language model, we call it MedLM. So this is a special purpose model that is multimodal, which means, and Shamila described that earlier, it could take text, it could take images, it could take a few things like video. So we trained that model to basically read X-rays to be able to come up with whether this person either has potentially tuberculosis or potentially a breast cancer. Now we all know that it is easier to take X-ray machines to remote corners of the country than to take actually an MRI or sophisticated diagnostic equipment. And then we do not have radiologists in every nook and corner in the country. But what this was actually, this model and this way was deployed, at least you could get X-rays out, go into remote rural areas, get X-rays, flash those X-rays back, and at least the model can tell you whether some of these X-rays point to a certain diagnosis. Now, like I said, it is not making the diagnosis, but then a clinician can look at that and what the AI model is telling. It can look at other data that's available for that particular prospective or that patient and say, yes, it probably makes sense. So now this is really where it actually has some very advanced usages in radiology. And lastly, Madhur described the fact, and we were very happy to partner with Manipal on this whole remote care, and where we had the partnership with involving Fitbit devices. I think this area is completely going to get transformed over the next few years, where remote patient care, we experienced it in a very minimal way while COVID was happening. But then in the future years, I think for many things, patients may or may not have to go, or may not largely have to go to unless that's the next level where they actually have to go because they need that specialized care. Because there is going to be monitoring equipment, there is going to be diagnostic equipment, and there is going to be, and there's, my privilege is I work with a lot of startups here, and I see the kind of work a lot of startups are doing today to actually have sensors with patients' homes. And these are not very unintrusive kind of sensors, which can actually allow for really high sophisticated remote care that can happen between a clinician and a patient without having to actually do it more physically. So again, I see that there's a lot of work to be done. Nothing is like, it can be done today or tomorrow, but I see that, there is a lot that is likely to change and transform in this remote patient care, that we are already, seeing beginning to happen.
Thank you, Vikas. Madhur, what advice would you give to healthcare leaders who are now looking to leverage these technologies, especially to improve patient care or to drive organizational success?
Yeah, so based on our learning, one is to have a clear-cut blueprint, because many of the times what happens is digitalization or the implementation of digital technologies is not implementing any technology in hospital. It's a transformation culturally, right? So are we actually geared up at an employee level to make this change? If we are not, then it is going to be very, very tough. So just a sec, sorry. Yeah. So it's going to be very, very tough. And so I'll just come, to specific pointers, what we have gone through, and the basis on the learnings. I can actually go ahead and give some suggestion. One is, the adoption remains when we implement the technologies, right? Adoption sometimes remains a key challenge. For example, these are new technologies. Many of the times, we don't know how the consumer is going to take it, right? Though we have developed it, the technology, but if the patient is old, they are not able to really use it and all that, it would not have crossed our minds at that point of time. And sometimes even the kind of communication which are going either to their phone and all that, the text or the font size is so small that for a senior people it is not comfortable, right? So though they can increase and all that on their mobile, but these are practical challenges what we have seen. So keep the consumer in mind, because when we develop, most of the time these programs are developed keeping technology in mind, not the consumer in mind, right? So even at the execution level. Second, what I feel, that ownership. The moment when we deploy these program in hospitals, these programs are owned at the time of deployment. These are managed by either IT teams or project management teams, digital initiatives team. But when it goes to the hospital, no one owns that initiative, and because of that, it suddenly falls down because no one's baby. So how's it doing? How consumers are saying? So no one knows really, right? So I think at ownership at a unit level, hospital unit level becomes very, very critical. Training of the staff, as I mentioned earlier, also that uh, uh, you don't know where patient is going to ask what. For example, when a doctor says, "Why don't you use enroll in heart failure program?" A patient may ask a nurse who's walking by or a receptionist, "Hey, what is this program? What is your feedback?" and all that. So until unless everyone knows about this program, it becomes challenging. Third party integrations, I told you earlier, data clear kind of solution need to be there. And lastly, the maturity of models, because as Vikas also mentioned, there is a huge startup ecosystem around healthcare, tech health, which is kind of growing. But what we see is that not all models have matured. So many of them are really at an early stage, and that's where we need to really see at what level and for what touch point or for what use case we are implementing this, right? So, but while we are printing this, while we are doing this whole thing, few things we should always keep in our mind, that how do we create this data-driven kind of culture inside the organization? Is everyone, and believe me, when we talk within hospital today, I think the acceptance on digital health is not a problem. You ask any admin person, they say yes, this is the future. You ask doctor, he say yes, this is what his future is. You ask patient. So in silos, when you talk to them, everyone is for it. Everyone is very positive about digital health and the transformation which it can bring. The problem is the stitching the story together, right? So how do we put this entire thing together and kind of offer these solutions? So interoperability is non-negotiable. I've still seen many teams, they say, no, this is not possible, that is not possible. And because of that, we kind of restrict some of the interoperability, which limits the consumer experience. That's what I would put. Uh, um, uh, Next, I think DPDP and cybersecurity is going very strong. We should not lose the sight of that as a hospital brand. I think, and then patient-centric design is kind of critical, because what we do, at least including IT team and the people who are the project management team, we ask them to spend time with patients and talk to them and see how their experience is with the services. The idea is that when they come back, that he should be able to say, this is how I am contributing to patient life. This is what I am doing. The moment that thing comes in, their thinking process change completely, differently. And lastly, I would say that we should definitely have clearly defined KPIs. Sometimes because of the nature of seeding them and then making a POC, it goes in a very long deadlines. So, and no one knows what kind of KPIs apart from implementation. That this is my timeline. I have to finish this project by this. that should not only be the KPI. My say, for example, for the team who is implementing, we would definitely go in and ask them was how was the patient experience, how was the adoption, how was the retention rate, and all that. So it is kind of end-to-end KPI for everyone, because it's, at least for us in digital, initiatives, it's not about the product per se. It is about the experience per se. I think no one is kind of monetizing these platforms today. It's all about offering something to consumer which can help them. And broadly, we have put in broad 3 4 verticals. One is on the medical outcome improvement, operational efficiencies improvement, market automation. Vikas mentioned about that. I think that's one piece where the CDP, we are working on that, and that can completely transform the patient is engaged. Because we have, if you see healthcare per se, we as an industry has remained to be episodic in nature. Someone gets a heart attack, come to us, we will treat you. Same patient after a few years may get cardiac problem, come to us, we will treat you. But the whole lifetime connect programs are not there, and that's where these CDPs and the technologies can help. And because unless we have that, I think this proactive approach will really not work out. So Vaishnavi, yeah, that's it. I guess.
Thank you so much, Madhur. Vikas, Madhur, thank you for joining me on the fireside chat and for sharing your insights. We have a couple of audience questions. I'll pose it to Vikas and Sharmila. Madhur can step in if necessary or if you think there's some relevant. What is the best AI module you have for OPD prescriptions?
You mean module or model? Sorry, I can't read that question, so I'll have
So
to.
Ashutosh Shukla is saying module. I think he means models probably.
Okay, so again, I can, so again, we have models, and there are obviously general purpose model like the Gemini, but there is a specialized large language model, which is the MedLM. I mentioned that. But what you are describing is essentially applications of AI, and that's where we've built some applications like this prescription recognition application that we have built, which is essentially going through digitized prescription, handwritten prescriptions, and and being able to create cards out of that. I don't think there's lots of applications that are out there, and we are very happy in case we can get in touch to show you and demonstrate. But these are again areas where there's probably, because every use case is different from the other. Some prescription recognition will require it to be, building an e-commerce card. Some of them would basically be just an assisting tool for a local pharmacy shop, so on and so forth. So again, understand the use cases. The foundation for building these applications exists. And Google does a pretty good job of recognizing, handwritten papers and translating them into any language and recognizing them fairly accurately. So we have the underlying technology. How you present it to a consumer is based on what is that they actually need.
Okay, we'll take one last question. When Sharmila's presentation came up, there was one question that the audience posed. That is, how does this interconnect all the patient data and how it works only on the data which we provide?
Okay, so that's a great question. So if we talk here, it uses the discharge notes, the prescriptions of the patient's data. From them, the key entities are extracted. When I say entities, it is primarily the symptoms, the medicine names, lab test names, the procedures. So you extract these entities not just from one discharge summary, but from all discharge summaries. And then you have a UMLS code. So I wouldn't delve into the details, but there are like ICD 9 and 10 codes, SNOMED codes, and these codes are all standardized, which means fever and high temperature would have the same node. So if there are two discharge summaries mentioning fever and high temperature, both of them would point to the same standardized code. So here we are standardizing information from different discharge summaries, and this way we are building the knowledge graph. So since we have the knowledge graph available, if we can go ahead and build a MedLM based, RAG based approaches. Vikas just spoke about MedLM model that's available specific for these purposes. So we could have MedLM based, RAG based approach, retrieval augmented generation approach. That's one approach. The second one is you could have knowledge graph models built on top of it. So these are the two approaches which will make sure that the responses that are generated are from your data sources, your patient information that has been fed in.
Thank you so much, Sharmila. With this, we come to the end of the session. As advancements in AI and the growing availability of vast amount of data reshape the healthcare landscape, it definitely promises a shift. And this, we believe, will lead to enhanced healthcare delivery, which will make it more personalized, efficient, and innovative, therefore ultimately improving outcomes for both patients and also for the providers. Thank you to the audience for taking time to join in on the session. Thank you, speakers, Sharmila, Madhur, Vikas, for your time and insights, and the Google Cloud and ET team for facilitating the conversation. See you soon with more updates and insightful conversations. Till then, goodbye. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you, Vaishnavi.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Sharmila. Thanks, Vikas.